Welcome. Today we have a special guest with us, Cecilia Bröms-Thell, Senior Business Developer and expert within life science. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So let's start straight away. Starting a company within the pharmaceutical or medtech domain is quite difficult compared to other industries. What would you say are the primary considerations for these startups?
Well, the complexity is both the charm and the challenge with life science. And there are a number of considerations you have to make. But just to mention a few, I mean, you have to understand in what regulatory landscape you're operating within. You also have to show that your product actually does what it's supposed to do, meaning that you typically have to understand how to set up your development program in terms of preclinical studies, clinical studies, etc. And of course, it's essential to protect your innovation. So you have to make sure you have the right patterns and the right IP strategy, just to mention a few.
Okay, you're saying just to mention a few, so I do have a feeling there's more to come.
Yeah, of course. It is complex, as I said. Given the lengthy process of developing these products, it takes a lot of time, many years typically. And looking at the markets in which you operate in, you have to also take in consideration that the revenues you expect your products to make have to sort of fund the development costs. So essentially, one country is typically just too small of a market to generate those revenues. So at an early stage, you typically have to understand the international market landscape and reach out internationally, which is also quite a complex process. And that also includes, for example, partnership with international partners, for example.
So like I imagined, you would continue and say there's more to do and it's even more complex. And I'm having a hard time thinking all these competence knowledge lies within one entrepreneur or one researcher. I do imagine this, like you need a team for this. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. This is not a one-man show. Yeah. So it is, as you say, it's critical to attract the right competence and make sure that you have the right skill set to bring your idea forward. And those skills are quite diverse. It's everything from scientific expertise, regulatory expertise, business development, just to mention a few. And what we see lately is also, for example, software skills. If you have an innovation that is based on software or have a component that is software. So it's quite a complex skill set needed.
Okay, this sounds really complex, and I do imagine you need to hire people, and hire people also requires money. So what about the financials in all of these?
So that is a really good question, because as you say, I mean, typically, especially in the beginning of developing your company, you have, some financial constraints, and you have to balance that with the number of people you can actually onboard. And in my experience in seeing multiple startup companies under development, I mean, the ones that do it really smart, they have a tendency of combining, for example, the part-time job offerings for key positions with external support, and you can do that in a really smart way. For example, assembling an advisory board with the right skill set that is complementary to what you already have. And the same goes for when you set up your company board, to make sure that you have the different skills that your company is of need of.
So you're mentioning a lot of things for a startup to take into consideration, and it will cost a lot of money, but is everything important from the start, or can they deprioritize somehow?
So that's a really good question. And I wish I could say that you could just do, one activity at a time, but that is not really how it works. I mean, these processes go along side by side over the whole development time. So typically you need to be on top of pretty much everything, but to make it a little bit easier at least, I mean, there are certain milestones where you can focus more on one parameter than the other.
And how do you know that? How do you know when to do what?
So that is also a really, really good question. And my best answer to that is really to engage with other entrepreneurs that has done this journey before, because it's really about understanding when things come along this journey that you have ahead of us. It's as we typically talk about multiple years during this development phase. And I would also really recommend to put yourself in a context where you meet all these people. For example, being part of an accelerator or incubator program is an excellent way of getting all this know-how from people that have done this previously. And being part of an incubator and accelerator is also important from the aspect that you get exposed to peers that are in the same situation and the same development phase as you are. Because it can actually be a quite lonesome affair to be an entrepreneur, especially in a very early stage, and to have someone to share the challenges with, but also to celebrate your successes is equally important.
Thank you, Cici. That's some really valuable tips. Can you tell us a little bit more about building a product that is to be used in the healthcare setting?
Yeah. So these products are obviously aimed in the majority of cases to be used by patients. And that requires that these products are safe and tested and needs to be approved typically by authorities. And you have to understand how that whole process works. Additionally, you have to understand how the business field actually looks like and how the cost structure is. Because if the end user is the patient, the payer may actually be the hospital or a county council or whatever. And in many cases, it's also a tender business. And that is also something that is quite special that you have to understand.
You just keep adding to the list of things to consider. And you kind of mentioned it now, but I mean, the financials, how do everything of this tie into that aspect?
Yeah, again, given that the development of these products is quite a complex procedure and takes some time, it also requires some financial muscles to actually bring an idea to the market. And especially in the beginning, and there are different ways of funding this development, for example, by grants, and that is really an excellent way of funding your idea in the beginning. But the further you get, you may have to bring in external capital. And I think that is actually an episode itself, how to do that. But in essential, I think it's important that you engage with investors that understands life science, because it is so special conditions to actually also for an investor to go into startups within life science.
Good cliffhanger. Let's do a film about that at the end of this year. Thank you so much, Cici, for sharing your valuable insights with us and knowledge. And I'm going to summarize this chat with 4 key takeaways. The first one is regulatory. It's really critical to take external expertise within this field because you want to make sure you comply with both laws and standards. The second one is proof of concept. Plan your studies so that you support both regulatory submission, but also highlight your unique value proposition. The third one is secure funding, and we can't stress this enough. It's a lengthy process and it will require financial muscles, just like Cici said. And the fourth one is the team. It's not a one-man show, so make sure to start really early to build a team that you need. Thank you.